Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This gentleman centers on marriage and communication. Helps a lot of people, but he does specialize in that territory, helping couples find love that lasts for a lifetime. Sometimes that gets derailed. Sometimes there is infidelity in relationships. We're going to talk about that today. Why does that happen? Is it the fault of both parties? Is it one? Is it from challenges from the past? Let's dig into that. This guy has a master's degree in counseling from the University of Virginia, and he's back with us. Paul Zohov joins us on the program. Welcome back, Paul. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And thanks to everyone who listens to us, because infidelity is a much simpler issue than people tend to believe. There's a lot of very dramatic movies out there about infidelity and cheating, and it really doesn't need to be that way.
I have nothing to say except keep talking. I want to learn more.
Putting together a number of the pieces from earlier interviews, please watch them, listen to them. It's most useful to ask the question, to be aware of that infidelity is a symptom. It is not a cause. In which case, once we understand that it's a symptom, we can ask the question, of what is it a symptom? And we can then proceed to have a productive conversation and perhaps achieve a new sense of forgiveness and trust that has been broken when one partner either has discovered that the other one has been participating in at least an emotionally inappropriate relationship. So where to begin this journey? Well, in a second or third interview, we talked about love languages. So one of the earliest disconnects is that we don't know to speak the love language of the other person. You may think you're loving them in your best love language, but it turns out not to be theirs. For example, someone calls me up one day and he says, there's something wrong with my wife. What am I going to do? I said, well, let's take a look. And it turns out that she, in this case, has been going outside the covenant of marriage. And it turns out that he's been paying attention to his business full-time. She has been looking for people to play with. She wanted quality time with people. And the more he paid attention to his business, the more alone she felt. So she became vulnerable to looking for quality time with somebody else. And then he notices. There's often a disconnection, a miscommunication of love languages within a marriage. And in our second session, you get very clear that when a person wants to be appreciated, you tend to do it. A couple I saw the other day says, I used to appreciate my spouse spontaneously, but now I look for opportunities to. Now that she knows that being appreciated has a high premium in his life, how he feels loved and connected, she chooses to be aware of and pay attention to opportunities for words of affirmation. And if there's 5 love languages, please go back to the earlier recording and learn about them, or come to me. That's fine. And I'm also happy to say that I'm submitting my book for publication today, which will take another month or so, but it'll be Marriage and Communication Recipes for Life. But the idea is that, I know that Rita, my spouse, is acts of service. And so when she says, let's change the sheets, I choose to change the sheets with her, no matter how infrequently I would rather change the sheets. Because if I don't change the sheets with her, she feels loved. Acts of service. And she also gets a chance to feel loved by me. So there's a double price here. There's 2 sides of the coin. So I say yes, and if you remember from our earlier session, yes, and I'll be right there. So she feels loved and I get a chance to show love, and we are loved together. With the love languages in mind, we make choices of ways of being and acting that maximizes the amount of love and connection between us. In terms of physical touch, physical touch is often confused with sexual intimacy. And we get to understand that sexual intimacy is only a dialect of the language of physical touch. Specifically, we learn to hug, hold hands, spend time together, So a good hug in the right place will leave us in good shape. So physical touch. So basically, the first area we look at is how we feel, what it takes for me to feel loved, and what it takes for her to feel loved. For me, it's quality time. I'll say, let's go to the beach. She'll say yes, and give me half an hour to throw in some laundry, and I'm good to go. It could be as simple a dance as that. So first, second, get to know each other's love languages and speak them intentionally. And then a large amount of infidelity goes away at that point. Secondly, we have leftover distortions from childhood that keep us from hearing and feeling loved. One person learned as a child that she's not good enough. Her father never said he loved her. She tried her entire childhood to get some approval from this guy, and he never worked. So what she's left with is a PhD, and I'm not good enough, which then extends well into her relationships as an adult. Because she looks in the morning for not good enough. She feels not good enough during the day. And if she gets an argument with her spouse, she also gets to feel good enough again. So there's many ways of unearthing earlier strategies from childhood that would no longer fit you as an adult. Learn each other's, we'll learn to and rewrite early interpretations of who we are. That's putting it rather shortly. Of course, then there's a lack of communication skills. We tend to react towards each other rather than respond, which leaves us unheard and disrespected. So that's 3. And there's a few other good ones, but when we disappear the iceberg, we don't have to play whack-a-mole with all the tips of an iceberg. So rather than dealing with one dysfunction at a time, we get rid of the iceberg by learning how to communicate and being aware of one another. When the iceberg disappears, your marriage remains. And once that happens, there's a good chance that you can recover into trust and forgiveness.
All of this being said, I want to look at it hypothetically. Let's say I have a couple, and there's one half of the couple, their love language isn't being met. They're just that's not there. So then that trickles over to the other person. This one is acting a certain way because they're not getting they're not experiencing what they need in terms of their love language. Then this person feels uncomfortable, and maybe their needs aren't being met there.
Often.
So there's a recipe for some challenge, potentially infidelity, and then go a layer deeper, maybe 3. This person has unresolved issues from their childhood
or previous marriages.
And you know what? Could be even both of them. They got both, a lot of second marriages. I think you said, 60% of them fail, or 50% of them fail, somewhere in that territory. Mm-hmm. Now you have 2 things going on here, and then one person steps outside the circle, if you will. Is there any return from that in that situation right there?
Yes, with apology. I think we did an interview on apology, but then again, maybe we didn't. So maybe that'll be next week. There's a way of taking responsibility for behaviors in the past that allows us to redesign our future together. Yeah. Should we choose to do so? Briefly, and maybe we'll talk about this next time, saying I'm sorry is not an apology. It's about you. It's not about us. So let's apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with, I apologize for, disrespecting you. I apologize for being critical, judgmental. And then you learn how they felt and the impact it had on us. Then you take responsibility for it. I take responsibility for all that I did. Please forgive me. And I promise in the future that from now on, before I do that ever again, I will stop, take a step back, pause, reflect, and choose to come back, and we'll communicate. Do you accept my apology? That's a very lightning version of apology, but it sets us up for a brand new future. A way of looking at it is that Michelangelo, the famous Renaissance sculptor and painter of the Sistine Chapel, we all know who's Michelangelo. And he's famous for the King David statue, 9 feet of marble, the King David statue, which we go to Florence, Italy to see it in person. And what most people don't stop to recall is that he started with a very large piece of stone, very large piece of stone, because it was 9 foot tall statue. And his job was to remove all the stone that hid the King David from our eyes. Brick by brick, chip by chip, he took away everything that concealed the King David from our eyes. And apology is much the same. We pick up behavior that we know that we did not serve us well. Yelling, critical, judgmental, ignoring, withdrawing, pulling ourselves away. And we knock that out of our statue of our marriage. And in the end, we're left with more marriage and less poor behaviors. Again, this might take another session for us to go in greater depth. So apology is important. And one more thing I point out way back in the beginning is that most men do not understand how unsafe it feels to be a female. You and I feel safe. We'll handle it. We'll handle it again. Big deal. When the moment arises, we'll know what to do. Our drop-down menu for safety is minuscule. However, we get to understand that the rest of the human race, that's all our females, never, ever truly feel safe. In fact, if they don't feel safe with us, they don't marry with us. If we don't feel safe with us, we don't get a second date. And so we get to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So one of the things we do is we say, please. Because when we say please, it lets them know it's safe to answer us. In the past, I used to say, hey, we're running out of milk. And then my spouse says, oh, no, I forgot milk. I must be a really terrible person. But now I say, hey, we're running out of milk. Would you please pick some up on the way home next tomorrow? With the please, we restore our connection. And they have their drop-down menu for safety is enormous. You know, should I say yes so he'll be happy with me? Should I say yes so I'll be safe? Should I say yes because I've learned from my mother to say yes to my father, and they got along for 45 years? I should say yes because I'm a member of the Mormon community, and the Mormon community, they promise that the male is the head of the household. So their drop-down menu for safety is enormous. And if we don't say please, they spend a lot of time figuring out what is the best response at this moment that leaves me the safest. So we have gender issues. We have loving language. We have leftovers from the childhood issues. We have lack of communication skills issues. This is why it takes 5 sessions.
Yeah.
To get together. And when we put all these pieces together, we have a shot at a future. And then she might forgive us, the males. No guarantees, but the moment will arrive around the 3rd session that, all right, I can begin to trust this guy or gal.
I love your and I know it's a bit facetious, but the drop down menu of why you're going to say yes. It's so true. It's like, everybody has a reason. I'm going to say yes because I want to keep her happy. I'm going to say yes because I want to do that as well. Let's go back to when you said the apology, the I'm sorry is really for us and not really for yourself and not us. How would you change that around? Let's say it's something major. Let's say you caught somebody emotionally cheating. Somehow you were paying the phone bill and you saw all these texts in a period of a month, like blah, 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 blah. Pretty obvious what's going on. How should the other person typically respond once this was discovered?
Well, the reason why we take 5 sessions, first we lay the foundation of communication. Then we gain the insights of love languages and personality types, like Myers-Briggs, thinker, feeler, and then we learn how to appreciate one another. We gain a bunch of tools and skills, and then we add a whole lot of appreciation and acknowledgement to put some gas in our love tank, as Gary Chapman puts it. And at a certain moment, beginning to forgive makes more sense than being manipulated to forgive. So that moment you're speaking of takes a good 3 sessions prior to set up the moment where, oh, that's what's going on. I see where this comes from. His parents cheated on each other and left him vulnerable to cheating with me. Aha. And with enough information, appreciation, love languages, and personality types, they may come a magic moment where she says, all right, we can stay together for a while longer and see how it works out.
Hmm. What percentage, and again, this is all hypothetical, but in your mind, what percentage when infidelity takes place is that coming from unresolved issues from somebody's childhood? Let's go childhood. Let's not go, past marriage, previous marriage. Let's go. What do you think? Is that number,
Well,
80%, 70? What do you think?
I give it a good solid half, maybe more. More if you throw in relationships from previous marriages or dating relationships from high school.
Okay.
In one example, it turns out that his parents cheated on each other. Her parents cheated on each other. Her brother's cheating on her sister-in-law right now. And so her radar is set on cheat. Her awareness mechanism, that our situational awareness, she's always listening, watching for cheating. If he looks at a waitress, can I say waitress? Is that okay? I don't know. She goes,
Server.
he walks on eggshells around her because she never knows what something he may do inadvertently that will set her off. Is that she wakes up tuned into Cheat Radio 101 and listens to it all day long and then goes to sleep at night with Cheat Radio 101 playing, which means it's hard for her to see the love when she's listening for cheat. If this was an NPR station, you know, tune in at 12 o'clock, how to spot cheating. Tune in at 2 o'clock, here and now. How do you handle cheating? Can you recover from cheating? So it's a truly distortion of our way of perceiving the world. And he can promise her till the cows come home that he will never, ever do that. And she can't hear him. She's listening for cheat, not forgiveness. But we'd have to do a major restructuring, tearing out walls and cabinets and laying new floors. So at the end of the process, typically around 5 sessions, they'll have a home they might consent to live in for the rest of their living lives.
Wow. It's understandable for, in your example, her to have that lack of trust. I have to cut some slack. I understand it, but I bet it even goes even deeper than that. Her, this is your job. This is just my viewpoint and just talking to friends and life experience in general. That situation can also be fueled by fear of abandonment because her parents broke up. So essentially, in her mind as a child now, she was abandoned. And we carry this stuff. We spoke about that. We carry this stuff later in life. So the cheating part, it's on her radar everywhere. So she just assumes that's what's going to happen. Okay, but the fear of abandonment, well, might be cheating. Then he's going to leave me and I'm going to be left alone. So now her cheater radar, cheater radio is now turned up even louder because of the fear I'll be left alone. And she doesn't know.
It's actually worse than that because she enters into relationships with one foot out the door with a bag packed. Her capacity to make a full-blown adult relationship, and with the anticipation that it won't work, it's just a matter of time before I'm abandoned, means she doesn't get a whole relationship to begin with. And nothing he can do or she can do will make a difference until we can rewrite old code. Sometimes this code goes way back into deep childhood.
Even though she may her 1 foot out the door, she's not going anywhere, but she's not fully vested in the relationship.
That's exactly the case.
She's always on guard. She's happy, but always on guard.
On guard is a good phrase. There's always on guard, which means even the good stuff doesn't get full credit.
Yeah.
And he could be the most loving person on the planet, showering her with love, devotion, and cherishing her. But in her world, she's waiting for the shoe to drop. Which means it's an imperfect, very distorted relationship.
Now let's add to that relationship and that situation, and both of them don't know each other's love language and don't know how to speak it. So And then, now I see it even clearer, Paul, that you need to know that before anything else for
Yeah.
when those things come up. Let's take out infidelity. Let's take one of them lost their job, and now there's stress of finances.
Stress. Mm.
And now how do I navigate that? Well, in a perfect world where each knows each other's love language, it'd still be challenging. Now add not knowing their love language, and now you got to navigate
And
that.
their personality type. I think I mentioned that in an earlier
Mm,
interview.
yeah.
Because if people are aware of the Big Bang Theory by, and Sheldon thinks his life, he operates cognitively, intellectually, and logically. He makes his plans, he fulfills his plans, he goes on to the next plan, and his emotions don't really score high in his priorities. So he gets together with Leonard, his roommate, who is a feeler, by the way. And so he doesn't ignore Leonard's feelings or Penny's feelings. He just doesn't notice them because he doesn't notice his own.
Mm,
If you're a thinker married to a feeler, we will learn that to get a whole buy-in, we got to listen to her or his feelings for us to progress. When you learn love personality, some people are highly planful. They like to have things in time. So, like my spouse, for instance, and if I say I'll handle it soon, it means nothing to her. Because if I say I'll handle it soon, to her, it means she has to do it herself to make sure it gets done.
so she wants a time.
She's more attuned to time. And I think I'm more attuned to proximity. It's a longer conversation. But when she says the word now, and I say the word now, it is not the same word.
Okay.
So once you know its personality, how our literally maybe it's a mind mechanism thing. We process the world through our feelings first or our thinking first. I'm a thinking first. We're here because I've been thinking about marriage and communication for at least 30 years. I started out as a domestic violence counselor, and I chose now to prevent it rather than treat it after the damage is done. Yes, and it seems love languages, personality types, learning how to acknowledge and appreciate one another, and understanding the distortions left over from childhood, and being acutely aware that men and women do not feel the same on the planet Earth. It just doesn't exist anywhere. So that's at least 5 layers to a cake that we might want to have a piece of. And it takes at least 5 sessions, mostly 5 sessions. It's sufficient.
I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. These 5 sessions, it is so affordable when you look at if you private paid a counselor, a therapist, you would pay more than that. By
Divorces
far.
are expensive.
And then there's that. For
Listen,
sure.
spend, and there's a military family discount as well. But for about $650 or $750 over the course of about 2 months, you'll have what you need for a marriage that grows for the last of a lifetime. I pretty much guarantee it.
That's
Or you will know why not, because there's clarity involved here. You may find out after you've been married for 10 years or 5 years, and you realize, I'd rather move on. It does happen.
Mhm.
So either you know how to stay together, or you just say how to not to stay together, or to be co-parents because you have children. Because the same skills, yes, sense and seem, personality types, love languages, go with you whether or not you're married or not.
Well, I was just going to bring up if you is serious about your relationship, you haven't walked down the aisle, we can still do this. It's a relationship to learn what each is about. Honestly, I think it's a great gift for somebody.
Well, if you're a new couple and you find yourself falling in love, there's a compatibility 2-session program.
Oh, great.
And if you say, oh, now that you understand that there's thinkers and feelers and judges and perceivers and love languages, and then you decide, well, let's continue. And you get to be you get engaged, and then you go to the 5 love languages program, not the 5 love languages, the 5-session program. So learn how to communicate well before you tie the knot.
Mm. Uh, last time I checked, and I had to check at one point, maybe 2, divorce attorney retainers, typically $5,000. And there you go.
They charge $450 an hour.
That's a starting point.
What you would spend on 2 sessions with a lawyer is you'll get a whole lifetime of communication.
Marriageandcommunication.com is the website. Paul, always great having you on here. Good stuff today. It breaks a lot of the myths, the misconceptions about why couples break apart and there is infidelity. And looking forward next time we get a chance to get together.
Much appreciated. I look forward to it. This is a living program, and in not too long, my book, Marriage and Communication: Recipes for Life, will be out. It's formatted like a cookbook. Do this, about a paragraph worth, and then if you want to learn more, keep going.
These are all the recipes for a great marriage, great relationship. You just got to get in the kitchen and do a little bit of work, and that's it.
A little bit of work, because lawyers are expensive.
This is the case. All right, we'll catch up next time. Thanks again.
Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.